All righty. Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am here with my guest today, Tana, and we are talking about all things business, coaching business, personal development. Tana and I have been working together. It's over a year now.
Yes,
Yeah.
since a year ago, May.
And she has grown and changed so much. And so I asked her to come on for us to have the conversation just around like what it took for you to move from that kind of like frozen in tech to this new belief of, oh my God, I can do it myself. Like you have figured out how to create your own landing pages, your own programs, your email stuff. And when you first came in, you were super scared of that stuff. So kind of want to go in that topic and then just talk about what you're doing in the world. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Tana Harter, and I am a connection coach for Christian women and those who are seeking the faith. And it was a huge transition to get to this part, but it really is part of the soul of who I am. And yeah, I'm like somebody that does crazy things. My husband and I compete in chili competitions all around the country. And I enjoy nature and music and all things fun and birds, as you can see in my background, along with
Birds and music is what I see in your background.
Yes, yes, I love all things music, including attempting to learn guitar and playing piano and keyboards. So
I actually have a guitar in my attic, but I don't know how to play it. So
yeah,
let's talk about when you and I met. I think you were one of those that I interviewed in a coaching group that was just getting started. And I was like, hey, who here hasn't made this certain amount of money? And I just want to have a conversation and see what's holding you up, what's stopping you. And then probably a couple of months later or weeks later, you ended up coming in and you met us in Serenbe. We met live. And are you even the same person now?
I don't think so at all, because when I came to Serenbe, um, I didn't realize how much I hadn't really worked around managing my mind and my emotions. Like I knew about mindset and thought work, but the emotion part of it, what I've learned over the past year is how much I put that aside and how the corporate world kind of made me do that or help me be that way. So Sarah B was the beginning of an eye opener.
And, let's just talk about that for a second, because a lot of coaches that hear this are new coaches and they are trained in mindset or the mindset model as you were and I were. And what you just said about putting your emotions aside, like putting your feelings aside and like just doing the mindset part, how it actually handicaps you. Because in order to do scary things, you have to be able to feel through it.
Yes, and I would say that was the really one of the big changes for me, is because no one had spent time with me working on sitting with just being present, just sitting with whatever is coming. And even though I've heard things like, oh, if you sit with an emotion, it'll go away in 90 seconds, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. And I was so busy doing other things that I wasn't taking that time.
Mhm.
You take that time, that's when you start to become more authentic in what you're doing. And then from there, that's when the magic begins, when you can start to say, oh, now I understand kind of how I feel, who I am, what I want to share in the world, and step into that belief. And that literally has been my journey this past year with you.
So the first step was, oh, I have to feel this. And it is possible to feel it and it release in 90 seconds now that I have the how, right? Would you say that's the first
Yeah.
part? The part I am most proud of you is, number one, is clarity about who you're working with and really owning that. So I love that you have gotten to that point, because there was some like, how do I say this? Or can I say this? Or, we come from a community where it's not okay to say that or do that. But the thing that I tell everyone about with you is, and I don't mean age as a negative thing at all, but at our age, anyone over 40 who is not familiar with the computer and tech, we really struggle with an online business, whereas these young kids are so used to always having a computer. And when you first came into eSchool, that was an issue with you. Like, you didn't even know how to do the first thing in your business.
That was so true. Like, I knew how to do a few things, but it was just my brain would go all kinds of places. Like, well, that is just too difficult. I think that was like my mantra. Everything is too difficult. But really, I've learned over this past year that nothing is too difficult. Honestly, it's about looking at the big picture and breaking it down into smaller steps. You just take the next step. And I've heard people say that, Kim, so many times, but it just didn't register until I went through eSchool and kind of learned some of this process and then began to embody it and believe that I could do it.
I'm curious about this. Do you, like, that paralysis state where it's like you just kind of go into froze? I'm wondering if it was because the feelings that were coming up were so uncomfortable, or because your brain actually didn't have the how steps.
Oh, wow, that's a good question. I actually think it's true in both cases, because I did have a very busy mind that was saying, and this goes back to childhood, you're no good in math, blah, 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 blah. This feels like math, same emotions, right? And I didn't know that whole thing about how we imprint these emotions in our bodies from way back in childhood even. And so once I kind of untangled that, and I'm going, yeah, this is not exactly math. It's just a different way of doing something. So I think that part was in there. And then there was just the fear of, if I push this button, something will go out there and it's just going to, like, I don't know, blow up, blow up the planet or something. I'm like, really? It was just crazy what was going through my head.
So that's 3 components.
Yeah.
It was uncomfortable.
Yes.
I had the thought, I don't know how, this is hard.
Yeah.
And then if I actually do it, that's going to create some kind of catastrophe. So you can see your brain was doing its job, and it was creating it's hard and I can't figure this out, and then shutting down to protect you from being seen, which is the typical new coach or new online entrepreneur.
It's really true, because I think when I came to you, I had been certified for a year as a life coach. And then I kind of did my own thing for a year, but nothing felt right. And I got a virtual assistant to help me. But it's really been this past year where I learned these tools. And thank goodness you have people on your staff. I just will say Mallory is amazing with her patience, in terms of, how many times can I ask you this? And you will just calmly walk me through it. So many times she did. And
I was going to give her the credit. I was like, guys, I'm not taking the credit for any of the tech stuff. That is all Mallory and office hours. Yes. I can't even go to those calls because it still triggers me. Like, I just had to, this is what I thought. I need to make a lot of money so I don't have to do that. And then I hired her. And so I was like, you know what? There's other people like me. Can you help them?
Yeah, seriously. She was and has been a godsend, as far as just helping to put it together and helping me do my first landing page. And then I did, what is it called, with Bitly, and it connected to all the different links and all this stuff. It was just a step at a time, and just trusting that if I just take the next step, I can make it happen.
The part about the not knowing how and then the going into freeze is so valid. And when you've been told, like, it's just your thoughts and to like just change your thoughts, but your body is in a nervous system response, like there's this reactive state where this is just spinning, and then you don't have emotional control, like you can't contain what's happening. It's so invalidating. That's where I was. I remember paying somebody to build my net, like to do this thing, and then she sent me these links to do it myself. And I was just like, oh my God, like we've got, like, let's change this, let's do this, and Mallory is so patient. She teaches like little T-ball kids and stuff. Like, you'll never catch me doing that.
And the thing is too, she's really good about bringing forward, well, you all are, about bringing forward new technologies and ways of doing things that are actually really helpful to all of us as coaches. And maybe we're not at the stage yet for that, but there's a container for that, and you can find it and you can go back and review it. And it's like, sometimes I had to watch these videos over and over. I just had to let it, soak and immerse in it a bit. And then it, became easier. You have to be willing to put in the work.
Well, and I think we're explaining what you're going to need before you actually need it, because the first thing you have to do is promote and get clients. And as soon as you get the clients, you're going to see that you need the system. Like, they have to have a place to land. They have to be able to book. They have to be able to pay. You'll see it then. But at the beginning, like your brain's like, I don't have clients. I can't get clients. I don't know how to do it. It's like doing it all at one time. So our idea was, let's get the net out of the way so that they can go out there, and then they won't have that in the back of their mind. Does that make sense? That was the idea behind it. We didn't realize that we would still have to deal with that much, like, war. Thank God she is trained as one of my coaches, because she can help with the nervous system regulation in order to help y'all do it. But my point was, you're saying I had to listen to the videos over and over, and I had to ask her the same questions over and over. We know that. And it is because you didn't know what it was. You didn't have an online business, and you didn't have the demand for the system we were setting up yet. So we understand that. We know that's true.
Yeah. And the other thing that I will say about it that was a game changer for me is in the beginning, you had these kind of introductory calls where we were getting clear on our niche and what we really wanted. And I don't know what happened there, but you helped me go into authentically what I really felt called to do. And then from there, I just started small. I just started telling people. And I think in the couple years since my certification, I hadn't made but, I don't know, $200. And then within 3 months of being in your program, I started making regular income. And I think last May to December, I made, I think, $8,000. So that to me was like huge. Like, you were helping me prove to myself that I could do it. And you were giving me tools and helping me really ground myself into authentically who I was, so that the niche I created would be something joyful and something I wanted to do. And then there was the tech part alongside that I just had to grow and figure out, and y'all help with that too.
Well, and you said you had a VA hire. You can hire someone. And I mean, the thing is, if you don't have the clarity, you're kind of wasting your money. You have to have the clarity, and you have to know what systems you need. Like I did this, I would throw my money at people and try to make them solve my problems. And some of that stuff had to be solved myself. So enough of that. I love telling the story about, Tana's like older like me, and we were really scared and freaked out. And it was almost like being told we had to write a term paper, and we would just freeze up and not do anything at all. But I'm really impressed with what you do now, like your soul conversations, your landing pages. You've got all of your stuff for the rest of the year already done. Like, you did that yourself.
I know. And it's like, here's the thing too, that I have really learned from you, Kim, is that we our minds just go to the negative on everything, and we need to, it's like set a timer, something. You've got to celebrate every little win, because that's what's going to drive you forward. And I really got stuck in a pattern of just ruminating on all the things that I wasn't doing instead of celebrating the things I was. And once I started doing that, then everything became easier and lighter.
And you started winning more, like
Yeah.
the chili cook-offs, clients, and I was like, just a winner. This is like the gap in the gain, right? That we've been talking about. It's so hard. It is just not our natural go-to. Our natural go-to, and we've been taught this also, but it's like, you think about it in the classroom and in school, it's always, how can you improve? How can you do better? How can you get, like, if you made an 80, how can you make a 90? If you made a 90, how can you make 100? And so we have been taught and conditioned to continue to do better and not celebrate that. Well, wait a minute, at the beginning of the school year, I didn't know how to do any of that.
Yeah.
So an 80 is great. That means I learned 80% of what I didn't know before.
Exactly. And it's huge, but I just think we dismiss it in all areas of our life, maybe not even in business, because I do believe, as you say, how we do one thing is how we do everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually true. That's actually true. And when you go to the place where you're actually celebrating all these things that you're doing, it just frees your spirit so much. And it makes you motivated, or it helps me anyway. It inspires me to want to do more.
All right, enough about business. Tell me about people. Tell me, like, how did you choose this niche to work with Christian women to develop a stronger, cleaner, more pure relationship with Christ?
Actually, I just was encountering so many people who had dealt with, they believed in Christ, but they had a lot of confusion around it. And I was realizing, wow, a lot of things growing up, maybe through a church or even in a family, rules and regulations, right? Some people call it religious dogma, just how many people were stuck in that. And I remember as a kid, my family, we were believers, but we didn't go to church. And then a girl down the street thought I was a heathen and that she should take me to her Baptist church, right? But she was one of the meanest people ever. She's just so mean to people. And I'm like, I open up because she gave me I think it was the New Testament. I started reading about Jesus. I'm like, this person is amazing. Why are these church people so mean? Like, I was so confused. But it stuck with me. So I'm kind of like you, Kim, with that. Like I started reading on my own and coming to my own conclusions. And I just see so many people that are, stuck in all these rules when really, we're a masterpiece created by God. And if we're not using those gifts and those talents and shining them out on the world, then we're just sort of denying what our Creator's given us. So those are the things that motivate me and want me to continue in this work. So much truer to who I was. I was a diet coach before for a year.
I started off with weight loss and wellness myself.
Yeah. And I mean, I did fine with it, but I never really got a coaching client. I think I got one coaching client from that.
You weren't excited about it. So I was talking to my business advisor, my investing guy this week. And me and my husband went in and met with him and his son on Monday. And he was talking to me about Christian capitalism. How it's kind of like this black and white, bad or not, money or not, the whole thing, the bringing money into religion, and what that's like. We see a lot of poverty and a lot of scarcity because of that misinformation. It's not the actual information, it's the misinformation. And so he was telling the story of that's how he got into finances. And it really is like his first and foremost is his belief, and then his family, and then financial literacy and security in the world so that we can please God with those resources. So he wrote a book. He has like some stuff on YouTube. His name is Todd Bayon, and he's from this area. But it's also like the Bible Belt here, and it's heavily conditioned in the misinformation, right? So some things have been, said as bad or wrong or selfish. And so we were talking about like how we represent that in this area. And most of our clients are online or not from here, and which is very painful because, and love your neighbors and your kids' friends, and, your kids are here and your grandkids are here. And yet it's what you're talking about. That's the issue. It's that misinformation or the misrepresentation of Christ, or it being suffering, not the glory and the joy.
Right. And, I love the Bible, and there's so much you can learn from it. But at the end of the day, it's about the relationship that you are creating with your creator. And that's the relationship that feeds things. And that has nothing to do with what the whole world is saying, if that makes sense at all. And that's where I think people sometimes get stuck. They're just like, oh, I've been told all these things, and now I don't know what to believe. And I've been hurt by people in the church and all of these things. We've all gone through stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, but where are you in your relationship with him? Start there and then branch out. And it will improve your relationships for sure.
What does the before and after look like? I know what it was for me and what it is for like whenever I'm doing the work around this, but for your client in particular, like what are they thinking and saying, and how is it showing up in their life, that confusion or disconnection?
Yeah, I think where it shows up oftentimes, actually I had a situation where it showed up in a family where there's I think 5 or 6 kids in the family. One was a middle child, one was the oldest, and they would have these nightly sessions where you would read a part of the Bible or something, and then you had to say what it meant. And then if you didn't get it right, the father was, not happy, right? And so the oldest child was like, oh, I don't want my siblings to freak out, so I'm going to jump in and help them, or I'm just going to take over because I don't want them to experience that because it feels bad. And then the middle one was looking at the oldest one and saying, she takes over all the time. I'm not seen, I'm not heard. But there were reasons, right? But both of them didn't understand one another, right? Same family. But those are the things. It's like not being seen, not being heard, feeling pushed aside, inability to actually show up authentically in your relationships with other people and with yourself, like not even knowing what your true purpose is, or why you're here, or what are your gifts and talents that you were given. Like those things, people have trouble identifying them, and then they're sort of lost swimming around trying to figure it out. And then eventually you figure it out, I think. But it'd be lovely if we could all figure it out a little sooner than now in your mid-60s.
No, I think of Louise Hay, though. She didn't like do Hay House until she was in her 60s, and she's a 6'2", and we're 6'2s. And
so yeah, you could just do anything you want, but I do believe you have to have that core foundation to be able to do it. And that's where I think people are just like, I've either been beaten down from people telling me I'm doing all these things wrong, or I should be doing this way, and not feeling confident enough, or not to really share how they feel in a way that can be heard, and just not really having. I think there's like a lot of self-worth and self-esteem issues too that come up, as people think, well, I don't really matter, and that's so not true.
Yeah, it does boil down to a worthiness issue. It's just covered by so many other things that we can't see it.
Yeah.
So Tana is also one of the integrative mind body coaches. And I'm just curious, what are your top 3 things that you love about coaching? Like, are you glad that you found it? Has it changed your life? What is it to you?
Well, it's definitely changed my life because I finally figured out that it was okay to authentically be me and share that with the world. And I think that I had things in buckets, right? And they weren't really integrated. And once they were, then everything just felt so much more joyous and so much more freedom. So that's one part of coaching and why I will always have a coach, because you're just going to have times when you can't figure that stuff out yourself. Um, so that's one. And then secondly, I would say it's just, man, the joy of helping somebody along the journey from really not feeling good about themselves, or just not being able to communicate, not being able to build relationships with others or God, or even themselves. Like, a lot of people are in a lot of self-denial about even themselves. They don't want to do anything for themselves, or it's bad to do something for yourself. So I love taking them through that journey where they discover along the way what's really true for them and what is false, because a lot of them have thoughts that are really not true. You can't prove it. That whole fact and thought thing.
You mean factuating?
Factuating is super helpful. And then just being willing to sit in the emotion of pure joy, or creativity, or even, how does it feel to feel defeated or uncomfortable or despairing? Like, when you understand what that feels like and you can identify it, you see the beauty of when you have the joy. And so you get a better balance that there's both sides to these things. And I just think our society teaches us to put the emotion part away, and it doesn't help us see the balance and the beauty of all of it combined.
Mm-hmm. That I think, like, where I know, I didn't know this, the inability to feel like negative emotion. So cutting off emotion, it's not just you can't feel the negatives, you can't feel the good stuff either. So if you don't know how to sit in emotion, period, then that means you don't know how to sit in joy, in pleasure, in gratitude. And we walk around saying, be grateful. And how do you feel? Right. But that's that disconnect, right? Is that what you would say? That's
Yeah.
we don't realize we've cut them both off.
Exactly. And so I really love helping people along the journey to discovering that, and then just the amazing transformation that happens when they come through that process and they now know how they really truly feel about things, what they really think about things, and that they're able to express it in a way that actually builds connection with other people, which is one of the big things that they struggle with, is with relationships, because of the lack of belief in themselves or the lack of confidence. It's all kind of tied together.
And so much isolation and loneliness. I mean, we hear that all the time. There's so much loneliness, and it's that disconnection from self and source. It's not, and then it's how we do anything is how we do everything. It's disconnection from people. It also represents that it's disconnection from within ourselves. And I was never so happy than to understand it was okay to want control. Like, oh, I can control. It's not bad to control. And wait, there's a path to controlling. What?
Yeah. Even, and it's amazing what things that you can control. Like, here's the one I really thought, when going back to business things, is that it's not possible to set a calendar schedule together and then just set it and forget it, like something in the microwave. Like, I just didn't think that was possible, but you actually can do that. And it actually gets rid of a lot of spinning cycles in your brain, worrying about stuff, because you just look at the calendar and see this is what's happening. So that was another thing too that I've kind of learned.
It's kind of like the
in
meal
here.
prepping and planning. You decide in advance, and then you don't have the drama. But there's so much chatter about doing it. Like, I don't want to be controlled, and I don't want to be on a rigid schedule, and I don't want, and then you have no control at all.
Right. And then now you're trying to fit in the things that you want to do instead of mapping them out first. And so that's been like an education. But what that did was it focused me more on, well, what are the things you really want to do that you love to do? And let's, make sure that those are in there first. And that was completely different, because in the corporate world, you don't matter. It's do all these things now and then do 25 other things. And you're like this and you're spinning, you're juggling like I used to do in college.
And I'm just thinking, and in your situation, this applies to you, is as we're aging and we're taking care of our aging parents, and oh my God, how much out of control and how much turbulence is going on when you don't have these tools. Like, aren't you glad you have these tools before caretaking your mom?
Yeah, because here's the thing. Literally, my mom was in a bad way. When I went to Serenbe, I didn't know if she was going to make it through the weekend. It was like so much stuff went on last summer with moving her here and everything, and she's doing great. But I got to tell you, like, when those emotions are happening and you're just like, you're sitting in the panic and you can't even, you're trying to focus, but it's like this weird adrenaline. And I noticed like we started to see some things not going well with her. It's been about a week or so. And there's just this different energy. It was more calm. It was like, okay, we're seeing some things that look similar to what happened last summer. I wonder what it might be. Let's get involved with this doctor. Let's talk to this one. Let's get everybody talking together and figure it out. And it turned out to be a simple thing that they just had her on too few fluids and she was dehydrated. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And it causes dizziness and it causes constipation. It causes other things. It can cause you to fall. But I couldn't have done that last summer. I was like a doe in the headlights, right? Deer in the headlights at Serenbe. Because
that's the nervous, when we haven't addressed the activation of the nervous system and we haven't learned how to regulate, people move through an entire life and will leave this life without ever learning how to do that. It to me, it's our superpower as a human to be able to regulate and understand. I used to get tripped up and reactive about everything. Like I was such a butthole, because I didn't know what to do with all that emotion and I didn't know how to contain it. So I just like have to get it out.
Right. And especially if you are a 6'2", you got a lot of energy usually.
We got a lot of experience contained in here.
Yeah. And then you're just like trying to, if you don't have an outlet for it, then it just goes inward. And it's like, then it's like if you can't figure out how to regulate that, it just feels so terrible when you can't. And that's what I've really learned over the past year, just through the self-healing master's program too, just coach training and other things I'm doing with you that are helping with that.
It's just so powerful and addictive. Most of my clients start in one area and they come through the whole entire process, because by the time they realize the power and how much it has changed their lives, they're like, I want to do this for other people. Like I'm so grateful, and that's the ripple effect. I'm like, if I can get these tools into the hands of more people, like it just improves our world.
Exactly. It's so true. And so, it's just I think it's a beautiful journey to be able to see the progress of, where you are now and then where you're going to be in the future. And then when you get to the future, you're looking back and saying, wow, look at all the amazing things that have happened. all the amazing things that I've learned, all the amazing things that have been shared with other people, and that other people have shared with me that they might never have if I hadn't taken a step, just one step, the next step.
And those steps ain't easy.
No.
That was not easy for you to say yes, like, I'm coming. I don't know, but for yourself. So you understand and have that compassion and empathy for other people of how scary it is.
Yeah. And I do think it's scary because you're actually you're sort of confronting yourself, or you're like, I've been burying this part of me. Oh no, you're asking me things and now I'm gonna have to bring this up. And it's frightening. Like, I honestly think there were times when I felt like I was gonna die if I allowed those things to come up. Then, man, to find out that oh yeah, I didn't die.
That the resistance is just so strong. And the beauty of what we're doing, for those who are listening for the first time, is we don't have to go back and dig up the past and go into all this other stuff. We deal with what's here right now because we want to move forward. We don't want to move backwards. We just want to understand why we're reacting and responding the way that we are so that we can propel forward. And every time you take the next big step, like this was a big step, right? Now I'm going camera, I'm being interviewed. You've got your soul conversation scheduled out for the rest of the year. You have a live website. You have every one of those was another stepping forward. Another time you said yes.
Exactly. And it's funny how you look back on it and say, why didn't I say yes to that sooner? But the thing is that we're ready when we're ready, and it's okay. Wherever you are is where you are, and that's just where you start. And there's no like right or wrong there. It's just start from where you are and then take a step.
So let's end it on, if there's anything I didn't ask you that you want to share, combined with what is the soul conversations that you're doing? Because you can just invite the public to attend those.
Right. So the soul conversations experience I'm doing is really been amazing. We've done a couple of them. I do them every 2 weeks on Wednesdays. We're kind of testing between noon Eastern time and 6 p.m. at night, just to give different people opportunity. But we've been talking about some really interesting things. We just did a session yesterday on authenticity, and it was so powerful because everybody just came in, shared what they thought about it, how boundaries come into play. It was just such a rich conversation. And I think the first one we did was on disconnection, and the one coming up is going to be on negative thinking and thought patterns and what that creates for us and how we can look at it maybe differently. So those are going on through the end of the year, and I'll probably repeat them because they're just so fascinating, because there's really no agenda other than here's the topic, and we just get together and chat about it.
Yeah. And for the sake of not dating and timing, I will just put Tana's information here. You can click and see what's available, because you might be listening to this a year later. But you've been talking about this whole conversation since I've known you. So I know that's something that's going to continue.
Yeah, and I still have my fireside chats too, where I do like just individual, hey, what's struggling, or what's, eating you up, what's hurting your soul. And we just have a chat, just 30-minute fun, it can be fun and revealing. So that's kind of fun. And then right now I have a 4-week deep dive that I'm doing to help people really focus on one area, one connection or relationship in their life that they want to improve. And that could look many different ways, but it's an intensive 4 weeks with a 90-minute strategy session and a couple of in-between sessions just to check things out, and then a follow-up at the end to kind of see, hey, how far did we come in 30 days and what's next? So that's you
have a variety.
I do. I have a number of different things. So
all right.
I'll just invite people to whatever sounds good to them.
All right. Well, do you have anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to mention about your actual process and journey that
gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I think I really kind of hit on the one thing. around just how I kind of ended up with this niche. But I will say that there's also an awful lot of, at least what I see in people and even in myself, around wanting to not make another person feel bad, and so not really being true to yourself and just doing things because you think someone else is going to be upset, or angry. And I did have a time when I was in high school where I was in a AAU track club, and we were preparing for the state championships, and I ended up having to do a runoff against another girl for the final slot on the relay team. And that was terrible because I was new. All those girls had been together for years. And I, thought seriously about throwing the race, because I was like, what's this going to do to me? My whole life is going to be ruined. But God had other plans in that moment. And when we got to the line to actually, and the gun went off, I just flew like the wind. I just let my soul do what I knew how to do, because it just, for me, running is back in that time was such a like emotional release and just freedom. And it was crazy. And this girl, I really liked her and everybody loved her. She quit at the 3:30 mark. And I was like, okay. And you know what? I didn't die. And the girls accepted me. They were fine with it. It was what I was telling myself. So I think about that a lot. What if I hadn't made that decision that day? I think about it. It gives me goosebumps. What if you hadn't done that? Because I think it would have changed my whole way going forward.
It's like the Marianne Williamson poem with where we shrink ourselves for other people to be comfortable, because it's so uncomfortable to be all that, or to shine.
So I did want to share that, just because I'm sure there are other people with maybe obviously not the same circumstance, but other circumstances that feel similar, to that. And I would just encourage people, take that step and be true to who you are, because it's going to work out in the end, because you're being true to you and who God created you to be.
Mm-hmm. All right, my friends, we'll call it a call. Call it an end. Thank you for
so
coming
much
on, Tana, and for sharing.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Kim. It's been a delight, and I love you.
It's been a pleasure. All right, my friends, I will post the link below so that you can find Tana and hook up with her on social media.